spruce tree, I told you, that was cut off, the branches cut off at the bottom, where they had this ladder. Then that tree was covered with electric light bulbs at Christmas for several years. That was the town's Christmas tree, municipal Christmas tree. It got power from the town hall. The town hall in those days, they had a switchboard up over the front door, right on this front wall, and had little knife switches. And when you went in the town hall, you didn't push a button. You went upstairs and threw the knife switches for whatever lights you wanted. So they hooked on to, put in another switch and hooked on that and ran a wire from a temporary pole over to the tree. And the Village Improvement Association, of which I was an officer and associate at that time, took care of the lighting. So at dusk, at least 1, maybe 2 years, I would go up into the balcony and throw the little switch, turn on the lights here, and then around 11:30 or 12, I'd drop in again and put them out. So but that tree had 2 uses, one in the winter and one in the summer.
Well, thank you, George. I think we got marvelous tour around the commons.
I hope I remembered what was. I had some notes, but I don't have any. Can't find them now. It doesn't make any difference. But I sure remember between 20 and 26 when we played here. If you ever fell down, you'd bark your knees. It was gravel and.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. I really
hope you can cull out a little of it.
Yeah. And as I said, that's just the first project. We have more to come.
What do you think of as another one?
I think it's great.
Well, I mean, what do you think you'll be doing?
What I think I'm doing? Well, I'm actually, you know, as I said, we would love to start with the common because that's like the center of the town.
Right.
And then we move out side by side. Like, you know, we probably do just one show about the school building, maybe just one show about the
I don't think you could do a very long show about the school building. I told practically all there is to say.
Or like Middlesex Canal, including, you know, the whole story of Middlesex Canal.
I was on the State Middlesex Canal Commission representing Chelmsford before I moved to Westford.
Right. Ginger ale factory.
I know quite a lot about that because I lived right across the brook on the other side. And Mr. Armstrong was a close friend, and his wife was a very distant relative of my father. And after he sold it, I think it was in 28, to Canada Dry, he was made a director of the board of Canada Dry. So about once a month or every 2 months, he'd go to New York to a board meeting. Mm-hmm. He'd come back on the train into South Station, get a cab to the North Station, and get the 514 train up, which was the one I took commuting from MIT. And he'd come and sit with me, or if he was there first, I'd sit with him and chat. Close friend, though he was a generation apart, a little older than my father. And then he'd have his man meet him. He didn't have a liveried chauffeur. He could have. I think he was a millionaire by then, although he didn't own his shirt when he came. But he had this man that did the gardening, mowed the lawn, drove him around. He'd meet us at Lowell Station, and he'd take me home before he went home. So I knew him pretty well, and I used to hang around there a little.
Right. The one site is also what's very interesting about it is a sword factory and everything, you know, behind that.
I haven't showed you the best sword.
Oh, you have a sword?
I have the best. I have 2 swords, but I have the best one in town.
You do?
You remember the article I ran about Bernie?
Yeah.
Well, between the time that the data was collected for that article and it was published, I got a sword. I remembered about 25 years ago being on business in Chicago, and I called a woman, Mrs. Gill. I don't think I'd ever met her, but we'd sent her Christmas cards. Got her name in Lake Forest, Illinois, and so I called her. Her husband's grandfather lived in the Sullivan House on High Street, and I think it was the Sims house, the first, third house up or second house up, where you start. And when Roby organized the Company F, the his first lieutenant, he was captain. First lieutenant was, no, it just well as anything. Parkhurst, he can't live there. Sewell Parkhurst, Edgar Sewell Parkhurst, his father was Sewell. Edgar Sewell Parkhurst. And when I was out in Chicago that time, I had rented a car, so I drove out to Lake Forest. It was right almost next door to where right the architect lived, you know, and we chatted a while. She was living with her son at that time, and he said, let's go to dinner. But before you go, I want to show you something. And he brought out this beautifully polished sword, all engraved with vines and leaves and things. It says Parkhurst on one side and F Company, Troop FMVM or something, and on the other. And I said to myself, boy, I'd like to own that, but he'll never let it go because he's a great-grandson of the guy that had it. Well, a month or so before, well, it was in late August, I know, last year, I told my wife, I'm going to see if I can buy that sword. Now, I knew Bernie had paid $1,800, and he didn't know anything about its history. So I wrote a letter to this woman. She was in Northern California. It took a little time to find her, and said that that sword should come back to Chelmsford, particularly to my museum, which occupies 3 floors of my condo. So I got, you know, people spend 3 hours just going through my museum. I said, I'll give you $1,000 for it, figuring she'd say, how about $2,000? She wrote back, sold. My son in Florida has it, and I'll have him ship it. Well, he shipped it Friday after Labor Day, you know, day after Labor Day, and I got it on Friday. And I took it up to Bernie and showed it to him. He says, I'll give you $2,000 for it. Of course, that was foolish. He'd given a lot more than that, but no. He said that he thought he had the best Roby sword in Chelmsford, but now he thought that I did. I asked him what it was worth, and he said, oh, $3,000 or up. And then I showed it to Mike Sargent, who has a collection of, has a couple of Roby swords. One of them is a presentation sword like this. And he couldn't get out, but he lost the combination to his safe, but he finally found it on the secretary's desk and he got it out. So I said, what's mine worth? He said, oh, $3,500 to $5,000.
What else do you think actually in Chelmsford, what's worth doing like a television show about it? Like a sites in Chelmsford?
Well, it's got to be.
Besides ginger ale factories, Roby, Common as we do right now.
Well, Chelmsford has an awful lot of firsts. You might be able to combine some of them.
Right.
One of them is the first hardbound town history in the United States, written by Reverend Wilkes Allen, the 4th minister at the church, who bought Hezekiah Packard's house, lived there, 1820. And Waters' history says, first town history of the dignity of a volume. I say first hardbound. The year before, in 1819, Billerica had what was known as memoirs. What was the guy's name? There's a little pamphlet, that's all it was. And he helped this guy write Chelmsford history. So as far as we know, it's the first really hardbound town history in the United States. We have the first school for the deaf where pure lip reading was taught. We have about the first real big cotton mill in the United States, Merrimack Manufacturing, which was in Lowell after 1826, but in 1823 or 4 it was in Chelmsford, so that's our first there. We had the first match factory, first matches in the United States,
Yeah.
1835, and I've done a booklet on that, you may have seen that. We had very early Boy Scout troop. I'm not sure when Boy Scouts started in this country, but 1915, Uncle Jim Kybert, who I knew very well, he's got a nephew in North Chelmsford now, Everett Olson's his nephew. He started troop in North Chelmsford, and that was one of the early ones. The Girl Scouts, 1917, Esther Woodard, who was Esther Dane, her name was then, she hadn't married, Sunday school teacher here, my sister was in her class, and she wanted a social club for her Sunday school class of girls, probably 10 or a dozen. So she started Troop 1 Girl Scouts in 17. Now that was not more than, 5 years or so after Girl Scouts hit here. It isn't the first, but it's very early. And I'm sure there are other firsts if I stop to think about it.
Right.
And those are some of the things, like the match factory. We know where it was, you know, the sign.
Right.
I instigated having that put up during the bicentennial.
How much we know actually like Indian history before the settlers came over?
I don't think we know too much, but if you read.
Well, I know a couple of books written by the gentleman who teaches in UMass Law, I believe.
Oh.
About the history of the
Indian.
The settlers.
Oh, the guy that just died?
Robin Hill,
Well, Robin Hill, Chief Robin lived there. He had a cornfield on the side of it, and the settlers gave him some other land, I think, and took that. We always got along with the Indians very well. There was no stream fighting. There probably was a little. Like Groton was practically wiped out, and several of the towns were practically wiped out. The never heard much of anything about the Indians around here. You hear more about them in Lowell. You see, Chelmsford's first real estate development was in 1688, I think, which was fairly early for real estate development, when Colonel Ting and Mr. Hinchman bought up land the Indians had had in what is now the Highlands and Middlesex Village of Lowell. And the Indians wanted to sell it. They were nomadic. They didn't want to hang around one place, so they bought it, divided up into 50 lots, and farmed out to people. Yeah, some of my ancestors bought some. And then when they settled it, everybody figured they were in Chelmsford. They came here probably to church, and because there weren't many churches around, didn't want to go to Billerica, and go to town meeting. And then a little later, I'm not sure the date, Stephen Pierce, I guess he was grandson of the first Stephen Pierce, one of the first settlers near the center of town, ran for state legislature and won from Chelmsford. And the legislature wouldn't let him be seated. They said, you don't live in Chelmsford, you live in an unincorporated Indian town, because he lived down, well, near where Courier Corporation is, down there off Chelmsford Street. And so he hustled around and got that territory annexed to Chelmsford. Then in 1826, it was annexed to Lowell.
How this area was called before it became Chelmsford?
It wasn't called anything, I don't think.
Anything like that?
No, it was the Wilds. You see, Concord was incorporated in 1635, and Woburn, somewhere around that time, people from Concord and Woburn settled here, and a few others came in. And then after they'd been here a short time and had something like 20 families, they had to have a church. So they got hold of Reverend John Fisk in the town of Wenham, who had a church that had moved from, I think, Salem to Wenham. And he was unhappy there, so he agreed to come here, and he brought part of his flock, I don't know, 10 or a dozen, so that was another settlement, and he was the first minister here. He was not only minister, he was the doctor. He studied medicine in Europe, such as it was in 1655. So he was the first minister for 26 years, I don't know. The second minister was Reverend Thomas Clark, and his daughter lived in Lexington. You know the Hancock Clark house?
No, I'm not sure.
Well, coming out of
In Lexington.
Lexington, you come to North Lexington. That's where the railroad crossing is.
Okay, yeah.
And then turn right and go back just a little ways.
Yeah.
And the Hancock Clark house is there. Well, John Hancock's ancestor, I'm not sure, his grandfather or father, Reverend John Hancock, lived there. and the daughter of the second minister lived, married her. So she's the grandmother of John Hancock. That was what it was. Reverend Clark was also known for helping our most notorious witch, who was not a ancestor of mine. I'm descended from her brother. But Martha Barrett Sparks, she married Henry Sparks, had a son, Henry Jr., who lived on Littleton Road in Westford, up about where the old open bucket is, just before you get there.
Right.
And owned land up back. That's Sparks Hill, and that's where I live now. But Martha Barrett was accused by a neighbor of being a witch. Her husband was away fighting the British in New Brunswick or Nova Scotia, up the Maritime. She was taking care of his 2 or 3 children. She was jailed in Boston, suspicion of witchcraft. Her father had to take care of the children in it, probably the Barrett Byam house. He got a little tired of that. He had to send in money for her support, and he got hold of Reverend John Clark, who had some connections apparently, and they went in and got her released. There'd been no charges preferred in a year. I think it was a year and a month or something like that. And she came back again. And so I tell people up at Hill, you know where Hildreth Hills is? That's where I live.
Right.
I'm back on Old Oaken Bucket. People that live there live on land once owned by a son of a witch. Because Henry Sparks Jr. owned it, and his mother was a witch, so he was a son of a witch.
Right.
But of course, you got a little story on her and the witch. I'd have to just look through my scrapbook at all the stories I've done for the Independent, and might find something there which could be greatly enlarged upon.
Right. Because as you said, this school building does not have enough story for one show. But what I'm probably thinking is just the whole school system in Chelmsford, not only this school building, but also the building across where the fire station is right now, the school building which is now town offices. All the school system developed, all the buildings. Where
well, there's a very good history of the school system by Susie McFarlin. I knew Susie well. She's the only one that I knew came to work every day up until the day she retired in a horse and buggy. Her man Herbie drove her, and she used to come to church here. She was a very strict attendant of the church. And after he died, he got rid of the horse. Ed Russell, Chester Russell's father, used to get down and pick her up and bring her to church every Sunday. When we put the addition on the church, I was on the committee, and we had a meeting with the architect, who was a son of a very well-known Unitarian minister in Lexington. Greeley. Did you ever hear of Greeley? He was the architect, and he was showing us the plans on it. I said, I don't like this electrical layout. Mentioned 2 or 3 things that should be clarified. He says, why don't you do it then? I said, I will. So I went to work, and I have the original drawings of the wiring for the addition. It's been changed a little since then.
But talking about this meeting house, I wonder, it's quite small, like a hall. Okay.
In 1843 and after, that is after the first parish church building, the present one, was built, the town hall was, of course, the basement, the brick part of the building. The town meetings were held there. Imagine that my grandfather opened them, because he was town clerk for 25 years. But they got pretty crowded near the end. That is 1880, when they started meeting in the present town hall. So because the moderator couldn't count the hands well, they'd all come out of the vestry onto the common. Those who were voting aye would go to one end of the common. Those who were voting no would go to the other end. The tellers would count them. then they'd go back into the town meeting in the town hall. That's another use for the common.
What was used actually the common, like just to keep like animals here and they sell like hay and what they did?
I'm not sure about that. I think they probably did keep some, probably sheep here, but I don't have that in writing. It was common to do that, common to do it on the commons, and it was probably, as I think I said earlier, a drill field too, when the troops were getting ready for the revolution.
Well, I think I got.
Ask me any question in the world, and I'll give you a correct answer. I'll say I don't know.
But you still have an answer.
I was a firefighter for 26 years.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Let's see. I did the. It was in '56.
Was it? Where was actually the original fire station? Was it? No, it wasn't the same. That was a school building over here.
That's right.
Where was the fire?
Down beside of the town hall.
Okay.
There's another building which was Mr. Davis's woodworking shop. I used to hang out hours at a time watching. And beyond that is the auxiliary police or something there.
Right.
And that was a fire station, and they had the old horse-drawn wagon in there. In 1923, when they first got motorized, they got motorized equipment for each village. The center got a Brockway truck, which they used up the valley recently. It's interesting, it had solid tires. And then a few years later on, when they got a new one, they shifted the solid tires to pneumatic tires, but they didn't change the steering ratio. And I was a deputy forest warden, or firefighter for 26 years. I used to carry hose and a lighting plant on the Brockway, and used to take it down the end of Jensen Street where the town dump was. They'd get a call 2 in the morning, and they'd say, "Just got a call for fire in the dump. Can you go down?" Come down and get the truck and go down. But to get into Jensen Street, I had to put my foot up on the dashboard, both hands on the side of the wheel, slow down to about 5 miles an hour to get around, because they hadn't changed the ratio. So it was interesting. But of course, there was they called it a firehouse in the Westlands down near Pelham Park. But they were just places where probably a hand-drawn hose reel